Hey, hi, hello. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess and I'm here to talk about the best books of 2025. And you're like, Jessica, why don't you sound so excited? It's because it was not a great reading year. I had a lot of good books, not a lot of amazing, oh my god, 5 stars, gotta tell everybody about it. So when I was looking at it, originally I was like, okay, I'll do a top 10. No, I really, like, I could do like the 10 best books that I read in the year, but like when I'm saying best of, it's like, I mean, these are the best I want to recommend that I keep thinking about, that maybe favorites in the long term, like not just best, I know it's best of 2025, but I'm talking about best of the best and not just best of a mediocre list, you know what I'm saying? So when I was really looking at it, I was like, I don't even have 10, which is a shame because there's other years where I have more than 10. Actually, honorable mentions, it's hard. This year, I will say the only hard thing is I feel it's harder to rank these because of, there's a few that are just like on the same level, but I have 5. 5 best books for 2025. Wow. I am hoping that for this year, it's way harder. I have so much competition, but that's just the truth of the matter for 2025. So let's talk about them. 2 of these are 4 stars and the other 3 are 5. So literally there was not even 5 stars. What does that tell you? That should tell you. So the first one would be Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adeji-Brenya. This is a science fiction novel, and the cover really threw me for the longest time because I was like, that's science fiction? I don't know, I thought it was more like historical fiction, but this is set in a world that's not too dissimilar from our own, and people who go to prisons, some of them end up on these chain gangs, which are a thing, or were a thing here in the United States, but they're not just on the side of the road, building railroads or doing other tasks. Like we still do have people on the sides of roads in America who are like picking up trash and doing things, but in this one, the people who are part of these chain gangs are fighters. So they go around to different towns and stuff, and it's a big entertainment thing. Like they cover it on TV, people are placing bets, and they're fighting in a ring against each other, almost like gladiator style. Like they're on teams, but they do like one-on-one, or they do doubles, like pair-ups, mashups, and they're fighting to the death. And so it was, I hate to say it's a really good book. I enjoy the writing, and I was gonna say entertaining, and it is. I listened to the audiobook, and I think it does a really good job for most of the time with the pacing to keep you entertained. I will say, like, we could have cut some of the stuff out, but whatever, we're not here to talk about all of that. So to keep you really entertained, because we're following really one fighter, but you also follow some other people, and you're learning like why they're in and what's happening, like because some of them have, just notorious, they have a really great reputation, and all the things that come with that. The people on the outside who are judging, the people who like depend on this because they're like betting on it, and it's like this huge kind of thing. It's like, how people are about football or baseball, and yeah, just the things that people did do or maybe didn't do that got them into these predicaments. And then it's just the longer that they're in and alive and closer, because essentially, like, if you make it a certain amount of time, you're gonna win back your freedom, but how some of their mindsets change, or how that really just like wears on the human mind, having to fight to the death trying to get to your freedom. But like, I don't know, it's really interesting, and also just heartbreaking, especially being a person who lives in the United States and knows how bad our criminal justice system is, and the prison industrial complex. And so it was really interesting reading it from this perspective and not just like a nonfiction way, because this, again, is not too far from real life. It just had some tweaks and some twists that are different from how it is currently. And so it was both like, this is entertaining to listen to, feeling connected to the characters and interested to see where they were going, and also like, oh, this is horrible because the world basically is like this and this sucks. But still a really good one, and I think it's worth it. Especially the audiobook is really good, so that is my one in the 5th place for best of 2025. In the number 4 spot is The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. And this I was very pleased with because it was a new fantasy release. I've had a lot of struggles with new fantasy releases lately, and this was a pleasant surprise. And so in this world, basically we have these different like houses, factions, whatever you call it, House of the Fox, House of the Monkey, like different people belong to them that kind of like forms what kind of jobs they go into and things, and they have an emperor. And so their way to keep it fair is he can only like serve for a certain amount of years. And then they have these trials essentially so that everyone has like a fair chance of becoming an emperor and it doesn't turn into like this kind of dynasty thing where it's only one family. However, there's some issues going on with this upcoming trials and with some of the people who are supposed to be participating. What's going on with the current emperor. We have someone like, because we have a story that's in the beginning and we see this years later. So these people coming back and there's murder and mystery. And obviously you get the trials, which I think were very interesting. Trials can be tedious if they're done wrong. I thought these were really interesting to read and it didn't feel too boring. And there's also very unique POV with this story. I don't want to say what it is because I think it's interesting to read it and like be like, oh, this is who's telling me the story. I thought that was really interesting. And not like the main character was my favorite because she was very frustrating sometimes. You're like, why are you doing that? Or why are you thinking that way? But she was still compelling to me and the other people. There's many characters, obviously, when there's something like this, when there's trials. And I think that the author did a good job of making them all feel real. And I won't say that they all have like the equal amount of time, but I feel like they felt decently fleshed out for, you know, side characters in this story. And so I'm very interested to see where this goes because I was reading it and was like, where is this going? And I had some thoughts on what was going to happen and that didn't happen. And so I think this is, well, it does. On Goodreads it says it's a trilogy. I don't know when the next book is going to come out, but very interested in that. And again, I thought the world was really cool. And the different magics, I won't say like the magic system was super explained, but it was just like not a super hard magic system. But yeah, I liked the dynamics of all of it, and the writing worked really well for me. So that's one that has stuck with me this year. This one is shocking to me, and is Radicalized by Cory Doctorow. So this is actually a collection of 4 short stories, which is rare for me. I rarely read short stories. I didn't realize that going into it. I thought it was just one, but it is 4 different short stories, and it's all, oh my God, it's so relevant to the world that we live in now. And they all kind of speak on different things that are happening in the world and basically would radicalize a person. The first one is one of my favorites because it's talking about technology, but it's usually like, it's talking about both refugees and also technology, and technology in the way that it is now, where we keep getting closer to not owning anything, how refrigerators have commercials on them, and you know, certain things aren't made to be fixable. You have to buy a new one. And it really talks about that, like with the toaster. If you don't have certain toast, you can't use the toaster. If you don't have certain dishwasher pods, you can't use your dishwasher. So using that in combination with talking about refugees and like their own struggles and how they're treated was super unique. I thought it was really interesting. And there's another one in here used, they're doing like, it's almost like a superhero kind of story, but yeah, it's just, it's taking things that, you know, other stories, like tropes and things from stories, and then taking real life things that we're experiencing and putting them together. I think that's why it works so well. There was one about like a father who I think was losing a child to cancer and like going all these forums. And so it's like, even if the story directly, like that one was a father suffering from cancer and him getting all these forums, and it was like the toxicity and the different, like the dark sides of these forums, it's like, even if that's not the exact forum that people are on or that you've heard about what goes on online and how dangerous these places can be. And so it just like touched on so many things so seamlessly. I thought that they all just worked really well. Of course, there were those two that the cancer one and the electronics, like the technology one, were my favorite. I definitely want to read this again. And originally when I went into it, I thought it was nonfiction, but it is fiction. But it's just not that far from where we are now. Something where you're like, oh, all too close. You know how when you watch Black Mirror and it used to be, you'd be like, oh wow, that's crazy. Hope we never get there. And now it's almost like a documentary. That's how this felt. And I want to read more by Cory Doctorow. He has a new book called In Shittification, which I definitely want to read because everything is becoming, we are just dealing with the in-shittification of everything. I don't know if he coined that term, but it's basically, well, it's called In-Shittification, Why Everything Suddenly Got Worse and What to Do About It. So he's explaining the process of enshittification of digital platforms over time and what to do about it. Okay, so that's what this is about. But it's basically just how everything's getting worse, how every company is taking shortcuts and making products and technology and everything worse so they can make more profit and making the thing shitty in the process. Anyway, highly recommend Radicalized, and definitely going to read more by Cory Doctorow. Now, for the top spot, this is what really gets hard on which one was. I'm just going to make an executive decision. In the second spot is Everything Is Tuberculosis by John Green. Actually, there's a longer title. Everything is Tuberculosis, The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection by John Green. I just thought it was excellent. And it's so funny because I was just interested in it because I had loved the Anthropocene reviewed so much by him and was not like, tuberculosis wasn't like super high on my list where I was like, I'm dying to read a book about it. He also had a YouTube video about it that I watched some of, but I just think it's fascinating because I didn't realize that tuberculosis was still so pervasive. It's something that you think about, or at least I think about. I think about the 1800s and, you know, before a lot of modern medicine and vaccines, that people were getting sick with it back then, that this was something that didn't really happen, or if it did, it was, you know, far away, it wasn't happening in the United States. False. And it also isn't just a straight up historical accounting of tuberculosis. It's very interesting how he weaves in different things and you won't realize how many people, things, events kind of touch or have been touched by tuberculosis, how that's all related. So I thought that was really interesting. And also the explanation of why it still is so pervasive today, which again, I did not know that. So that was fascinating. And then also why. And then he also weaves in these stories of real people that he met who had been affected by tuberculosis. So I thought it was just all really well done. It made me emotional. I learned a lot. I listened to the audiobook and followed along with the physical. I think he has a really good voice for narrating audiobooks. So this one was one I really loved and recommend to everyone. Last but not least, in the number one spot is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. I've heard of this book for a while. It was made into a movie, I think, starring Michael B. Jordan. So this is another nonfiction book. And I don't know, I just skipped over it because I figured I've read other books, you know, similarly to that one. There's no need for me to read that, but I ended up reading it. So glad that I did. I think it's excellent. So it's told, Bryan Stevenson is an attorney, a civil rights attorney, and it chronicles like his start out of law school and getting into civil rights law, opening up his own practice where it was basically to help people who had been wrongfully convicted, or, you know, if they were convicted, their convictions, like what they time served was ridiculous, and he's just done so much. He's been practicing law for a really long time, and I'd never watched the film, so I didn't know all the intricacies, but I thought it was really interesting how he told the story, especially starting out from how, you know, when he was just getting started, and the cases, he basically tells them over a linear amount of time, but of course cases don't all get wrapped up in like 1 year or 2 years, and so he may move on to another case but comes back to another one that he's still fighting on, and it's so frustrating. I listened to the audiobook, reading something like this, Because I think a lot of people still have this misconception that if you just do the right thing, you're never going to be in trouble by the law, and that is so false. And even some people may go as far as to, okay, well, you know, well, people like him exist, so people who are wrongly convicted, he can help them get out, and it's okay. And it's never okay for someone to be wrongly convicted, or, you know, people who are charged as a child, but they are charged as an adult and have to serve these life sentences, because it's never just oops, we caught our error 30 days later and you're walking out. Like, he presented so many cases where there was glaring evidence. He had witnesses, he had, you know, like actual physical tangible evidence of their innocence, and would try to present these to the court and be denied. Just to get in front of the judge for them to hear their appeal was a struggle, let alone getting into the courtroom and then sometimes still being denied when they have all of this evidence. Because what? Racism. Yeah, it doesn't stop once they become a judge. Sometimes it's worse because they've been practicing law for how long and they're cemented in their ways, and it's disgusting. So there were some moments where I was so mad. I was so mad, or I was so sad. I cried. Anyone who does this kind of work is, I'm amazed, because I don't understand how you don't get beat down and so defeated doing this kind of work. Just the amount that he had to do things in certain towns where he was threatened. People, of course, who were going to come forward being threatened, is just awful. And then you're also hearing the stories about the people who are affected, the ones who were imprisoned and spend whatever percentage of their life when they shouldn't behind bars. And nothing about jail. Prison is easy. And, you know, their family who's waiting for them to get on the outside, and how some of them don't live to see them gain their freedom, or people who gain their freedom and then they're not alive that much longer after they're out. It's just so good. Because for some reason, some people like to think that racism doesn't exist, and that it always has to be this blatant thing of like flying the Confederate flag or saying the N-word, and it's so much sneakier than that. And so I just think this is a worthy novel for everyone to read in the United States. Outside the United States, if you're curious about how these things happen, it's just excellent. So it's definitely my number one of 2025. So you should read it. Well, that's all I got, folks. That's all she wrote. Yeah, that's all she wrote. Those were my top 5. And again, I had a lot of good books, but not a lot of amazing ones. Oh well, such is life, it happens. Hoping for lots more bangers this year, but I would love to know any of your favorite books from this year. Maybe I need to borrow from you and put on my 2026 TBR. But thank you for watching. Stay blessed, hydrated, moisturized, and sunscreen. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.